started having nuclear weapons, and after we saw that there was a race, everybody was into having their nuclear weapon.
Okay, have you got a question?
And then the question is for me: has North Korea the right to possess nuclear weapons or not?
Okay.
And who's deciding about those rights?
Christoph Blut.
Well, especially countries which are, sort of in dire need of energy.
Why should nuclear weapons be something that only 5 states are allowed to have?
Well,
if we're allowed to have them, why shouldn't other people be?
Well, because it's such a massive, as a weapon of such massive destruction, that if things get escalated...
Shouldn't we not be allowed to have them then?
Well, I mean, that's the reality that it happened, that we should limit the kind of the extent that is being possessed to minimize the risks.
But would we feel safe if only the Americans had them? The Americans are the only ones who've ever used them.
Ella Rule, tell me this. I mean, it's your contention that this program is for civil use, right?
Originally, it was for civil use, yes.
Right. So the nuclear weapons argument's irrelevant to this. Are you saying that North Korea doesn't need nuclear weapons?
Personally, this is my own personal feeling, and the North Koreans probably would take not the slightest notice of me. My personal feeling is that any country that wants to be safe from the Americans needs a nuclear weapon. They only need one. That's
okay. Aidan Foster Carter, I heard a muttered rubbish from my direction of my right ear.
Granted that bad international law, in my view, is better than no international law. Yes, I mean, there's a lot wrong with the present nuclear regime. The big 5 who are acknowledged to have the nuclear weapons have not been quick to get rid of their stocks or even draw them down as they were supposed to. Also, everybody knows that India has them, Pakistan has them, Israel has them, and that's outside the treaty. But to me, the fact that a regime isn't working very well and there are breaches in it, it does not mean that it's a good idea from any viewpoint for everybody. Does anybody seriously think, however much you may hate the Americans, I'm sure there are people here who do, regardless of their government, by the way, but that's another story perhaps, do you really think we'd be safer if every single country, including a regime like North Korea, had just one nuclear weapon? Really? It's like maybe everybody on the street will have a knife. People in America think everybody should have a gun. Good idea? Come on.
I want to hear some views from the audience on this, so stick up your hand if you've got anything to say. Christoph Blut, obviously North Korea is not the only country to have broken the non-proliferation treaty. Iran, owners of this channel, did so, allegedly. Now, do you think North Korea should be particularly singled out for attention?
And why not Israel?
Hold on, I'll ask you in a second, Ella, but this one's to Christoph.
Well, I think the problem with North Korea is, first of all, that it's a proliferator of nuclear technology and of missile technology. Secondly, it's the whole dynamic of the crisis on the Korean Peninsula, which means that the addition of nuclear weapons into the mix, I think, is extremely dangerous, because we just have to look at the Lebanon war. What kind of miscalculations could lead, given this kind of tenor?
It's from Akshay Joshi. Your question. Yeah.
I would like to ask the panel that is North Korea seeking greater friendship with US?
Ella Rule. We've had this visit by Clinton, of course. Yeah. Is North Korea seeking greater friendship with the US? The mood music hasn't been good the last few months, has it? I mean, Hillary Clinton, Bill's husband, and of course Secretary of State of the US, said that North Korea was trying to seek attention. North Korea then in turn accused her of behaving like a child, or alternatively an old granny with her pushchair. These aren't the words of people who seem committed to a productive dialogue, but what do you think?
I think Korea is definitely interested in good relations with every single country. It then gets slapped in the face, and it does tend to respond rather rudely sometimes to slap in the face.
How do you get slapped in the face?
I can't detail that for you at the moment, but I mean, it just happens all the time.
It's North Korea that pulled out of the six-party talks and the nuclear program. Sure, yes, but
they pulled out of the nuclear talks after they had launched a perfectly legitimate satellite for broadcasting and civil purposes, and this hoo-ha came that they'd threatened Japan with a missile. I mean, in most of the television programs you heard this reference to they'd launched a missile. It was just a satellite, like hundreds of countries have launched without any fuss and hoo-ha. Okay. And for that they then get some sort of resolution of the United Nations Security Council passed against them with a threat of greater sanctions. In those circumstances, well, you know, I think I'd be inclined to use a few four-letter words, and if they do, well, good luck to them.
Question from the audience for now. Man in the blue T-shirt at the back.
If I heard correctly right now, Israel, as you said, is into proliferation of nuclear weapons, just like North Korea. Why is North Korea just being singled out?
Okay, a question I put earlier on. I think there's another question there. Man in the red.
Got out.
No, I can't. We can't go there at the moment. We've got to take a break, actually.
Yeah,
but we'll be
okay.
back in a few minutes for more of this topical debate. Welcome back. We're talking about Korea, and our next question is from Samreen Koja. Samreen Koja, your question.
My question to the panelists is North Korea a socialist paradise or a failed state?
Is North Korea a socialist paradise or a failed state? Ella Rule.
Right. It's a poor country as a result of the fact that its markets all got messed up as a result of the collapse of the Soviet Union. But within that, everybody has a home, everybody has education, everybody has medical care, the food is shared out equally among everybody, and they survive very well. Everybody has training in arts and music or something of that kind. So it is a socialist country because it does provide for everybody. There aren't these rich people who live extremely well and everybody else, sleeping under the bridges. In fact, the Koreans were totally amazed when they visited here. So some friends of mine came and stayed at my house, actually. And at that time, they had actually seen with their own eyes people sleeping under the bridges, and they just couldn't believe it. One of the richest countries in the world. So yes, it's a country that takes care of people and that gives you the chance to develop all your skills and abilities in order to contribute to a happy society. So yes, it's a socialist country.
The World Food Programme says it's providing food aid for 9 million North Koreans to stop them starving to death. That's nearly half the population.
They have got difficulties as a result of this problem with the oil. They've also got problems because their country is divided. If you look at the geography of North Korea, it is a country that is very mountainous, and traditionally it was always where industry was established. The rice bowl of the Korean peninsula was in the south. Well, they got cut off from that when the Americans invaded the southern part of the peninsula after the end of the Second World War. And as a result of that, it's always been, they've needed to trade in order to get enough food. But because of the collapse of the Soviet Union, they have encountered difficulties in that regard. And then especially because of the embargo on their acquisition of oil, the difficulties involved with that, this has caused them enormous problems. But people have been imposing that embargo from outside and then pointing the finger and say, ha ha, you're starving. But that's not because of socialism, that's because of embargoes.
I have to